Hi everyone, my name is Pamela Nuri, Head of Expedition Operations at Noble Caledonia, and this is a very proud occasion on the year that is the 30th year and the 30th anniversary of Noble Caledonia to do a little interview with some of the founders. So we have with us on the bottom right of the screen, Andy Cochrane, the founding director. Hello Andy, how are you?
Hi, I'm very well, thank you.
Good, good, good. And on the bottom left, we have Chantal Cookson, who I lovingly refer to as the social attaché of Noble Caledonia. Hello, Chantal, how are you?
Hello, Pam. Lovely to see you. Really well. Freezing cold.
Yes, you're up in the Highlands of Scotland, are you?
No, in Northumberland. We've had snow, hail, thunderstorms, you name it.
Oh my goodness.
It's lovely to see you.
Yeah, as well. And then Dr. Kim Crosby, who is the director of Noble Caledonia and Ceylon, and also the previous head of IATO. Hello, Kim, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Like Chantal, I'm freezing.
Well, you are in the Highlands of Scotland, or are you up in Edinburgh?
I'm in Edinburgh at the moment. I'm in Edinburgh.
Okay, lovely. So, Andy, my first question is to you. We've been going for 30 years, which is quite amazing for a small private travel company based out of London. And 30 years ago, expedition cruising wasn't a thing. The word wasn't a household name the way it is today. Today, it seems like everyone, every cruise ship company has an expedition cruise ship and every travel company has a connection to expedition cruising. But 30 years ago, travel was a whole different scene. And what gave you the inspiration to send passengers on small ships out to remote blimps of unknown, remote and uninhabited islands? How did that inspiration come about?
Well, I've always been interested in small ships. Really from the beginning of my working life, I've been involved with all types and sizes of vessels. But what always interested me was that what you could achieve with small numbers of passengers. And to that end, I was always had in the back of my mind that one day we would start a company which would allow us to use small ships in a sort of interesting and fulfilling way. And really, it comes down to opportunity. And when an opportunity arose, which was unfortunately from adversity, it was the first Gulf War, which took place, I think, in 1990. And that had a devastating effect on travel. Basically, people stopped traveling, particularly from the USA, which was very badly hit, and ships were tied up all around the world, nowhere to go, no passengers. To a degree, this was an opportunity. I was aware of one small ship, which I had worked with in the past, which I knew was perfect for such a venture. So I contacted the owner, Krista Sonnen in Sweden, and suggested that we form a company based in London, which would operate his ship around the world on interesting itineraries. And much to my pleasure, he accepted. Actually, it's quite interesting how it all happened, because I telephoned him on a Thursday afternoon at the beginning of October in '91 and suggested that we put together a company like this. And by the Monday, I was situated in his London office, pulling it all together. So within that week, we had to find a name, register the company, look at the itineraries, produce the literature, a logo, and also the advertisements, which then appeared in the same week on the Saturday and Sunday. I mean, when I think about it now, of course, it would be impossible to do such a thing again, because regulations have changed so much. But to put that together in a week was an amazing, I mean, obviously I had some help as well, but I was surprised that it could actually be done. And now I was even more surprised by the response that we got. In the following week, we took a number of bookings, which allowed us to actually start operating in about 2.5 months later, when we sailed into the Indian Ocean. And really, as I say, the rest is history. We've gone on from then, obviously. it's been a fantastic 30 years. I wouldn't have envisaged at the very beginning that it would end up where it is today, but obviously it's been a lovely ride, and I can't think of anything else that I would have rather done with my life, which is a great thing to say, really, because, you know, we don't all get the opportunity to do things that we really like.
That's lovely. And I happen to have, if you'll bear with me to share my screen here, a picture of the little blue ship, the Caledonian Star, provided by Chantal. Thank you very much. Is this the vessel that started it all up?
Yeah, very much so. She was perfect, great size, 100 passengers, and also a really well-built ship. You know, she was absolutely excellent for traveling the world, in a certain amount of comfort. I'd never really thought about the ships in the way that traditional cruise companies do, because, you know, most of them see it as the destination and the entertainment, and the reason for traveling. I've always looked at small ships as, you know, the vehicle to get you to places that you want to go to, and it allows you, of course, to go to all sorts of places where larger ships can't go. So she was sort of perfect, really. Yeah. And, you know, for a number of years, we did extremely well with her.
And I love this image here Chantal provided, is one of the old technical schedules of the vessel in the Seychelles. We've had such a wonderful 30-year relationship with the Seychelles, so it's quite fun to see this itinerary up there: Mahe, La Digue, Aldabra, Stowe, and everything done in paper on one of those little brown sort of clipboard folders. Chantal, I love it. You and Kim were on some of these voyages as well.
Yes. I mean, I was on quite a few of the Seychelles ones, the ones in the beginning, but I mean, the thing is that it was so different in those days. Schedules were handwritten. There were no computers. It was a different world. And it was challenging, and communication with the office was quite rare because, of course, it was always by probably fax, and half the time the fax machine didn't work, and then you couldn't, the satellite telephone cost about £100 for about a minute, so the office would freak if you rang up on that. And it was just being on the little blue ship, as everybody called her, and I think all the passengers rather felt that they owned that little ship.
Yes.
It was just like it's sort of real adventure travel. And it was as much an adventure for us as it was for the passengers.
Well, it's amazing, you know, you look at that little vessel and it's 100 passengers, and 30 years later, we're still running these quaint little boutique old vessels, classic vessels with still only 100 passengers. I absolutely love that element of it.
And I think that's what's so amazing. But I mean, the little blue ship was quite basic, but we sort of improved, and now the skies are unbelievably comfortable and so different from what our little blue ship was. But that was the one that started us all off, and God bless her, actually.
So, I mean, travel, like we said, was such a different sort of atmosphere and experience 30 years ago. And I think things were very organized and regimented and much less casual. And the invent of expedition cruising with this sort of more laissez-faire, casual, opportunistic, the weather comes in, you do something else. Andy, you mentioned that was quite a big appeal, I think, in the early days, and I would suggest that it's very much still a big part of the appeal today. But doing things casual, opportunistic back then, it must have been a completely different experience.
Well, it was really a matter of walking down two roads at the same time, in that, of course, when you published an itinerary, you had to give, well, in fact, we've always given more information on the itinerary than most companies do. But it's, you know, at the same time, you don't want to be totally regimented by it. And of course, with only 100 passengers, it does give you much more flexibility than the larger ships. You know, I think of simple instances where, you know, for instance, being in somewhere like Dubrovnik, when the big ships come in, and even in the early 90s, the ships were quite big, and, you know, they'd come in maybe for the morning, or they'd all leave by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And we would stay on because, you know, to see Dubrovnik at night is very special. To see it in the daytime when there's thousands of people milling down that one main street and along the wall, it just doesn't have the same excitement. So, you know, the itinerary might have said that we'll leave at 5 o'clock, but, you know, maybe we stayed till 11 because the next port wasn't so far away, and we could be flexible like that. And as you say, weather. I mean, weather has probably been the biggest of the problems over the years, and trying to find alternatives to avoid what was ever in our path. We would do that, and if that meant changing the itinerary, then of course we would do it, and we would advise the passengers as it was happening. You know, Pam, you would stand up in front of them and say, "Sorry, folks, you know, tomorrow we were supposed to do this, but there's a force 8 in the way, and we're going to do this instead." And very rarely was there any complaint about such activity, because people appreciate. No one wants to sit in an 8 or 9 when they could be doing something else. So yeah. I think small ships make it so much easier to be pliable.
Well, I've noticed often when you have to change the itinerary because of, you know, of weather or political situation, the whole room sometimes becomes elevated with this exciting sense of adventure that's about to, you know, lay ahead of us with the new unknown potential places. But I mean, what I have access to now as an expedition leader in terms of charts and the internet information and weather forecasts, it was an entirely different situation back there. And here we go. I just want to click onto this next image. Here we have back in the old days, Kim and our owner, Katerina, in Svalbard, was it, Kim? What is going on here in this very early days of expedition up in Svalbard?
Yeah, this was in Longyearbyen. This wasn't on board the Caledonian Star. This was on at the time when we were chartering one of the little Russian vessels. It was on the Ala Tarasova, so named after a Russian opera singer, I believe. Anyway, we were doing trips around Longyearbyen, and unfortunately turnaround invariably happened because of the flight schedule at 3 in the morning. So Katerina and I were sent off to meet the incoming passengers at 3 a.m. and we felt that they needed to be able to recognize us in this tiny airport. And so this seemed a very good idea. And helpfully, I think I was wearing map tights at that point. So we helpfully pointed out where they were so they could actually, you know, if they were feeling a bit lost, I could show a leg.
Yeah, well, that's extremely expedition handy of you to wear those chart tights with an arrow as well on Longyearbyen. I mean, that's going over and above, as we always do still today, but we don't have to dress like this, thankfully. Okay, so I just love that Katerina's come up in this picture here from the days. She was an assistant expedition leader, and Per Magnus was an expedition leader. In our industry. I've been on ships that where I saw charts and I saw their names on it, and I thought, isn't that amazing? You know, they've worked just like us field staff out there in the field. And I think that speaks a lot to the sense of it being quite a family business. It's a private company, but it's really more the sense of family business. A lot of, to me anyway, the decisions that come down and trickle down from head office are often made. It's the sense of always, it's the right thing to do. Sometimes, you know, it's not the business thing to do, but it's the right thing to do. And that has guided a lot of the atmosphere of the company. So people will say that it has a certain character or personality. You come on the ships, it's a sort of family, homely feeling, and the whole company has that sense. Does anyone want to speak to these two families that have been so integral in how this company character has evolved? Andy, you and Tim and Laura, and then the Salens in Sweden.
Yeah, well, of course, it all started with Christer Salen, Katerina's father. He's a great entrepreneur and was just the right sort of person to be involved in the startup. Because he had great vision, and he still does. And there's no doubt that chemistry is so important in any company. And being a private company makes makes life a lot easier. I mean, I think if you're working on behalf of shareholders or a corporation, the pressure to always do better year on year in terms of profit is enormous. And I mean, I've worked for such companies, and it's not an easy thing to do, to keep customers entirely happy and also increase your profits annually. So having the setup that we have had for the past 30 years has meant that we've been able to grow, but in a human way. It hasn't meant that we've had to bring lots of new people in with new ideas and change the company from what it was originally. You can't really, I don't think, in the travel world, be all things to all people. It's important to concentrate on what you want to do and bring people along with you, and that's really the path that we've taken. And fortunately, it's the business has grown substantially, and of course, everyone is here to hopefully make a profit. But I can honestly say, with all the people involved, that that is not always top of the list. Top of the list is making sure that our passengers come back and enjoy the experience.
That's exactly the sense. Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would second that absolutely. Although I would say, I don't know if since I now work with the Salen family and Per Magnus, the vision came from you, Andy. I mean, it was the perfect symbiotic relationship, but I think the character and everything you've instilled in Noble is just, it's brilliant. And I do think it's a huge part of the success of the business, that we still have the little 100 passenger ships that are full of character, and they're little brave hearts in the grand scheme of things, exploring and going around the next corner, and let's just see what we can find and what we can do next. Yeah. So I think but it's huge, the fact that it's very much this family, and as you say, it's been about having fun as well along the way. I mean, it's not purely driven by the bottom line. It's driven by, let's have a good time and explore and provide this wonderful platform.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually amazing with Katerina and Per Magnus that they've grown up with expedition cruising. They've worked in the industry. I mean, Katerina was on the Caledonian Star. I mean, we worked together all around the world, really, and she was part of the team, so she knows how the business operates. She knows how ships operate. She knows all the huge problems. And Per Magnus, again, was an expedition lead, and I think that has also helped a huge amount.
There we go. A little bit fuzzy of a photo, but Katerina there on the right with Chantal looking ever so professional in her ginormous red float coat.
Obviously, continuity is really important in a business like this. I mean, when you think about operating ships all around the world, you are throwing yourself open to all kinds of problems on a daily basis. But I think the good thing about the way the company operates is that we really control every aspect. As you know, in Sweden, the Salen shipping look after all of the aspects of the vessels. And in the UK, we look after all the aspects of the passenger. And, a lot of companies farm various services out, which, is probably fine for them. But we've always liked the way of operating, in that we are in control of all aspects. And I do think that's quite important. And also, I think I sort of mentioned earlier that having the sort of continuity of people involved through the years has been fantastic. I mean, I've been very fortunate, and now that my son Tim is the managing director. I mean, he started about, I think, 8 years ago. He's been through all aspects of the company, and he's probably he is the right man for the job. Actually, better than I was probably the right person to start it, But to carry it on, you need different visions, and certainly Tim has those. And likewise, my daughter Laura has always been, well, for the past 10 years, in charge of all the marketing, does a fantastic job. And so it is important that we keep those links, because when new people come into a business, as is often in the travel, you get an awful lot of movement. They have their ideas and they feel that they have to change things, and often that is to the detriment of what you're providing. So I think we've been very lucky that we've been able to keep that strong link all the way through the business.
Yes, and you mentioned a lot of companies farm out. One thing is marketing, and there's lots of sale agents all around the world. And when it trickles down, certainly to us in the field, is that we know we've directly marketed to our clients. So we have directly told them what they need to know. And if we haven't told them something, it's on us. But generally, there's much less misunderstandings of people coming on board ill prepared or not knowing what to expect. And that's very nice how it filters down to passenger expectation side on board. Another thing that has been quite involved for us, Kim, if you'd like to explain the links there, is there's two main expedition membership organizations in the world, and that's the Arctic one, IECO, and the Antarctic one, IATO. But quite strong links with those two organizations throughout the 30 years. It's also IATO's 30th anniversary this year. Do you want to build those connections for us quickly?
Yeah, sure. So Noble, of course, started in 1991, and that was the same year that IATO, the International Association of Antarctic Tour Operators, started. One of the founders of IATO was Salen Lindblad, same people. Well, an American company with Lars Erik Lindblad. But I think what it was indicative of the sort of expedition tourism or expedition cruising had started a little bit before that. But it was at this point it really started to grow, and it was mainly US based, as you were mentioning earlier, Andy. And so Noble was the first UK based offering along those lines. And so I think what's been quite interesting is how the industry has grown since then. So one of the things that changed, is there was still maybe only 3 or 4 ships in the early 90s that were doing this kind of offering. There was the Lindblad Explorer, the World Discoverer, and the Caledonian Star. But shortly after that, on another global event, was Perestroika. And all of a sudden, these Russian ships came on and were available for charter at incredibly low rates, ex-passenger ferries like the Ala Tarasova, we talked about earlier, or ex-research vessels like the Professor Molchanov, which Noble also chartered. And it grew, and on the back of that, I think it was just slowly this concept of cruising just really took off. But I do remember they certainly were the sort of good old bad old days, and I do remember leading a trip for Noble up the Atlantic on board the Professor Molchanov, and it was called the Epic Voyage, and I think it was supposed to take 30 days. It actually took us something like 37 by the time we were sailing all the way from Ushuaia back to Devon. Anyway, and was stopping and it was almost an island a week, just because the islands are all so far apart. So the Falklands, and then South Georgia, and then Tristan da Cunha, and then up to Ascension, and St Helena, and then Ascension and on. And literally, on every step of the voyage, something utterly extraordinary would happen, most of which are probably better left in some cloud in the past and not talked about. But it really lived up to being an epic voyage. And the 20 passengers that got off at the end of that one, because that was a really small ship and a small number on board, I think they all stayed in touch with each other for literally a decade afterwards. And I was still on a mailing list. I got something from one of them actually not that long ago. I bumped into them in Inverness. But yes, epic times, epic voyages, and the start of an industry. But yeah, so IATO is the Antarctic one, and it saw the real growth with the advent of the Russian ships, and slowly some other vessels came online as well. And then IECO, the Arctic Equivalent Trade Association, was started, I think, in the early 2000s, and it was Per Magnus Sander, Katharina's husband, that was one of the founders of that. So yeah, it's been, I think that both families have been very, very involved in creating and building this character. But at the risk of repeating myself, I think one of the things that's really wonderful is that that character has stayed, whereas a lot of the other companies have, yeah, they've sort of, you know, followed the need to grow and the need to modernize and all the way through, where I think staying true to form is an absolute winner.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's been alluded to now, but it's this idea that this continuity and this certain family culture of these classic lovely small ships that's remained for the last 30 years. And so we have this unbelievably loyal client base. And so instead of, like many of our competitors, having one product that we're trying to sell to the whole world virtually, we've got this incredibly wonderful loyal client base. Some of them have been traveling with us full 30 years, and we're always trying to offer them something new and take those same people to new, wonderful, exciting adventures, which is wonderful as a staff member. I'm sure it's fun in the office too. And these people are, you know, the 10, the 20 you mentioned on the Tristan voyage, I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, I've sailed with some of those guys too. And Chantal, you've been in and out of the scenes, pottering yourself and onto many of these voyages for that full 30 years. You must have seen some incredible things over all those years.
Well, I certainly have. I'm not sure how I managed to intermix my life with a full-time job at Sotheby's, but somehow one bent rules here and bent rules there. But just rewinding when Andy started up the company in Charles Street, I mean, he's quite modest because he was in the Salon company's office, but in the basement. And I remember it being really dark with rather grand furniture, but pretty dingy. And the staff, I mean, Andy, you had maybe 2 staff, and you basically set up a company, and it was a template that has never changed. It's grown, we've moved offices and things, but and you know, the staff is now, you know, increased hugely, but it has been the template for UK expedition cruising. And I think why all our much loved guests travel with us, because things don't the itineraries change, different things, but the actual concept has never changed since 1991. And it's all in-house. And to me, that is such credit to Andy and to the Salens, that the company just goes on year after year. But as for me, I've seen many adventures, traveled with so many fantastic passengers and with them, and it's always been a privilege working with amazing expedition teams like our dear Pam as expedition leader. But we were very fortunate to start with it, that we had legendary, I mean, probably before you were born, Pam, legendary expedition leaders like Tom Ritchie, that I think really, you know, sort of helped lay that template. I could write a book on all the adventures and the mishaps and things that we could never publish that happened. But,
well, I think you should.
Well, I think I'd have to get a lawyer to look at it, but I think that we as part of the field staff have just loved being on the ships as much as the passengers, and for the passengers, particularly on our skies, they feel so at home there, because okay, we maybe update the decor and maybe update the pictures, but it's so often it's the same crew. They're not, you know, the crews gravitate from one ship to another, and for them it feels like they're coming home. And the adventures happened, and there's a list of them.
Well, I love
and
that.
Stairways, gunboats, in the South Pacific, you know, dug out canoes with little boys that have never seen a white person before. And in the early days, it was remote. You were out of communication, and you felt a lot of the time where you were. Some of the time, we didn't know where the hell we were, but it was really like we were going to unexplored parts of the world, and the passage just joined in with all the excitement, and this still exists.
And those historic connections, when you walk around the vessel, Chantal's arranged a lot of the decor and a lot of the illustrations and artwork on all of the vessels. So when we have a new vessel when we've launched each of our vessels, or every time we have a refit, there's Chantal walking around and Andy with swatches for the pillows and the lamps. But the illustrations are a lot of our field staff. Ian Bullock's done so many of the illustrations on board the Hebridean Sky. A lot of the photographs originally on the Island Sky were taken by various field staff. So that connection with you three, and then also the field staff of today, everyone feels a part of it. You know, the new staff that get to contribute photos and illustrations feel a big part of it, the way the passengers feel a part of it, and that whole sense of this lovely family business is certainly rung through.
Pam, I mean, you really hit the thing, is that the whole company is just one family. I mean, it being a passenger, field staff, our beloved owners, Kim, it is just a family. And when things go wrong, the family are there to support you. I mean, it's a remarkable.
It is.
Company,
it really is. Yeah, it's wonderful, and everyone feels all a part of that. The crew as well, and it's really
particularly the crew. I mean.
So Chantal, although we have this glitch in the road here, pausing operations during our 30th year, and of course we expect to restart pretty soon in the British Isles. But tell us what you have been busy with behind the scenes whilst everyone else has been locked down and waiting for the hairdressers to open.
Pam, you're wonderful to have asked me that. I'm so pleased because one's been pretty busy in the last year, getting pretty frustrated, but we came up with an idea. Well, really, you know, we have a wonderful charitable trust, and you can everybody can keep updated on what we've been up to on the website. But we came up with an idea. We wanted to support various COVID projects, and a lot of discussions which one we do. And in fact, we're doing one in Cambodia, Madagascar. And really the one that is actually particularly close to my heart is in India, Future Hope in Calcutta. So it was a fundraising, but there were quite a lot of fundraising projects around and about, and something that would be rather fun. So we came up with an idea of doing a jigsaw puzzle of the Hebridean Sky and the Island Sky. And it was a complete nightmare to get it off the road because no jigsaw puzzle company really wanted to get involved because of the Christmas trade and then the lockdowns and their factories weren't working. And the whole thing was a complete nightmare to get off the ground. But we discovered a lovely company called Cornflower, who have been absolutely amazing. So we have produced 2 jigsaw puzzles. They're not in a box. We thought boxes would really annoy people. So this is one is actually of the Island Sky. It's anchored off South Georgia, and you can own, and they're limited, so they're limited editions. You can own an Island Sky or a Hebridean Sky jigsaw puzzle by donating, and the minimum amount is £35, and then you will be sent from the Northern Distribution Centre, which is here, the puzzle and also an illustration. And if you'd like to order one, all you have to do is to go onto our website and then go on to the NCCT part of it. So these are unique.
So if you need your fix, you haven't sailed on one of the sky ships for a while, you need your sky fix, you can get the jigsaw puzzle to finish up your lockdown before you get to sail anytime now, and the proceeds go to the Noble Caledonia charity.
Absolutely, so I didn't explain that very well. And we're immensely indebted to Sue Forbes, because choosing illustrations was you know, for jigsaws is actually quite difficult. But in the end, we used 2 of her illustrations. So a huge thank you to Sue Forbes for allowing us to use her illustrations. So £35, and you can get a jigsaw. And the proceeds are going to? They're going to Cambodia, to their COVID project, one in our beloved Madagascar, and then of course Future Hope in Calcutta. And that's all the information is on the website. Great.
Thanks so much, everyone. It's been really nice to see you all and chat to you all, and I'm sure we'll see you out there again pretty soon. But well done on 30 years of a really, really fantastic organization.
I think we should raise a glass to Andy.
Yes, it's water, but...
And Katerina.
All right, thanks so much, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye. Captain Hanneman reversing the Caledonian Star into the lagoon at Al Dabra. I mean, that would be an international incident now.